wasn't even gonna make this video for real. A nigga had been stepping back and living life, but goddamn, this nigga Max went out so bad he had me coming back to making a video like the Green Goblin mask. That nigga is getting cooked harder than me, and honestly this is probably the worst way a black man has went out in recent history, or at least in terms of pop culture. But honestly, looking at the criticism, it's kind of split. Surprisingly, you have people who support Faze Diddy Banks, but then you have the people who obviously support Max but are disappointed like a disappointed father. I think I have a unique perspective though, because the way I look at it, I feel like Max has his own part to play in this, and you know we got to clock that T, bitch. Comment for the algorithm. Okay, so to start this off, we need to talk about the recent things Max revealed about the reason behind his departure from the Faze clan. I'm just gonna play all these clips and let y'all see, and I'm gonna do it all at once because I'd rather lay it out plainly.
We had no control. There was no control. We're just like we're puppets. At least that's what it felt like. You get what I'm saying? Anything could happen at any moment. We don't own this shit. We don't. And we don't have control over our careers as much as we should have.
They tried to make that nigga pay 20 bands a month. What the fuck? Or give a percentage of myself. What the fuck? But Max is such a good nigga. He just, yo, bro, I just want to. And now niggas like Max look crazy, look like egoed out niggas.
Now, as I know, FBD worked for me. It's my cousin. Now he's strings now. He worked for me. He sat in meetings and he heard these things for his own ears from me. Free man. He's allowed to say whatever he wants as he feels.
So I could ramble about each clip, but what this boils down to is that it's just a bunch of corporate / industry bullshit. It's such a nasty sight to see, because how did content creation go from something that was built on the backs of the people? How could something like that be turned into such a streamlined gimmick? And evidently content creation has evolved to have some serious downsides with the corporatization, because Max is bluntly telling us he felt like a puppet. And the inner conspiracy nigga in me is saying that sounds like he sold his soul. But I'll be a little more grounded and just point out the stark contrast between this Max and the one pre-Faze. He's also under such a tight NDA. This nigga is having his cousin confirm the conditions he was in, like having to pay 20 bands a month to stay in a guest crib. That's life-changing money for a lot of people, and he's throwing it to stay in a house. Mind you, old Max was staying in my Duke's crib for free. This nigga went from free housing to 20 band tax. But the most fork found in the kitchen thing to me was Max playing that laugh track at Banks's tweet to obviously signal the contrary. But like, Banks is so clearly evil, why did he even do this? That's what I mean by fork found in the kitchen. Banks sets off all the alarms when it comes to danger, yet niggas still trust him, niggas still be around him. And I just got a lot of stuff to say about him, but that's for later. Like I've been saying though, it really comes down to pre-Faze versus post-Faze Max. And with just 3 clips, you can learn that a millionaire not only felt like a puppet, you can learn that he was being turned into the method and paying 20 bands to sleep. And then on top of that, he's hinting at an evil white man being behind the huge collapse of an organization. Let me know if he had more or less problems with my Dukes, because personally I'm not going for that little shit. And let's just talk about that for a second. Back when Max wasn't in Faze, he had a cool little thing going on, and comparing the energy then to now, it's vastly different. You see, pre-Faze Max had a group of friends, and if you've been around and you've watched my videos, you know I reference this a lot, but what stood out to me as some really good content at the time was 5 Star House. Max invited a bunch of his homies to an Airbnb, they did challenges, and it just felt so real, so authentic. And the fact that it was one dude, his friends, and a team that was obviously curated by him, it felt more in line with your at-home creative. That's a nigga and his crew versus the world, and he traded that to be with a bunch of questionable people, and even has done some questionable things himself, but I'll elaborate on that in a second. I hate to put it in terms like this, but when Max joined Faze, he got closer to the industry, and in the same way Icarus got too close to the sun, I think Max got too close to the industry.
It's called, when Max left, he called him like, yo bro, why you leaving? Why you leaving? He was giving all the reason. He's like, yo bro, the last reason for real was you called me a nigga. You know what this response was like? Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? What? And he's like, bro, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know you said that shit. I know you said that shit.
I said this word in an emotional response, and I said, all y'all blanks, and it's a mistake, and I'm fucking retarded. I'm a 34-year-old man-child, and I have many, many flaws, and I'm an idiot for saying that. If you really have a problem with that, why have you told me multiple times I don't have a problem with that, we're good? If you really have a problem with that, and I could say this, Ron, last subathon, fucking said it. Muted his mic and said it. The chat laughed, and everybody told him to say it, and he said it. Lacey has admitted to saying it publicly. You know this.
I'm going to be honest. These are very, very, very weird circumstances, like extremely weird circumstances. I know there's a lot of back and forth that's transpired between Max and Banks, and I'll briefly touch on that just for the story's sake, but I want to talk about the implications beyond the sensationalized media, because it's just very weird how a black man can be subjected to these casually racist environments, and how not only will he enable it, because here's a screenshot of Max not only telling Banks he's past it, but also how he's gonna make him proud. I really need to come back to that. Banks also exposes everyone else for saying it, and these types of people lead to other people like this.
No, dude, don't Ricky, you're going backwards. Dude, there's nothing wrong with saying that. If you're saying it in a non-racist way with your friends and you're not doing it on stream and they're okay with you doing that, no, it's not about shut up, Aiden. I don't care.
You just have this guy Aiden trying to push this weird propaganda, and he's just the last person that should be leading any type of conversation like this at all. Faze guys perpetuating these casual racist environments empowers ignorant people to be loudly wrong. And what fries me is that Banks was just trying to be petty. He was exposing the Faze guys for pillow talking about Max, and here's what I'm thinking about it. I don't know how true it is. There's definitely a chance that some words were exchanged, but I also think it just boils down to pettiness, given how nobody likes him for real. But at the end of the day, I think when it comes to listening to anything Faze Banks says, view it through the lens of there's truth, but there's also a vendetta. And even if the Faze guys were talking bad about Max, I mean, this is LA streamer business. Is that really anything to be surprised at? I don't think so. Max responded to all of this by essentially boiling all of this down to Banks taking advantage of him when he was vulnerable. And that's where the whole I'ma make you proud thing comes in. People were on Max's side, but they expressed a just genuine disappointment in what he was doing here. But I think a lot of these opinions are based on how unlikable Banks is, and the fact that Max went out extremely sad. He was literally venting to Faze Banks at his lowest and not his mom. That's demonic, twin.
What
I'm
did he
not gonna
say?
lie. There's levels to it, and that's one of the lower ones. But I say all this to say this is bigger than Max, because generally speaking, there is definitely something more predatory going on in the industry, where someone who is on his own rise can be swept under the industry connections, and all of a sudden that same person who should be happy and surrounded with abundance is now a puppet. But that's only the start of the industry relationship, because it gets weird from all sides, in my opinion. I feel like there are a few things we need to keep in mind. Plaqueboymax has changed. Faze Banks has been a weirdo. And at what point do we acknowledge the fact that someone can go from bright-eyed kid to compromised by the industry? I always mention these two situations, but Tay and Jace are my go-to examples when I think about how Plaqueboymax has changed. That would be prioritizing content over his friend's well-being. Tay Too Smooth was a situation that rubbed me wrong, but it was easily brushed off because, let's be honest, Tay was really a lame-ass nigga, and he did some really foul stuff. Talking behind your friend's back is really foul. But despite that, I maintain the idea that Tay Too Smooth was reduced to the fool and made a laughingstock, and this was reaffirmed when Max did the same thing to Jace. But it gets weirder, because right now Max's cousin is a legend that Faze Banks had a predatory relationship going on with Charlie D'Amelio, but I think that really adds a new layer, because recently Banks was just involved in the cover-up of Faze Temper's allegations. Well, allegedly, that is.
Breaks my heart. And bro, when I told Banks about it, he said, nah, bro, that's just some Tommy shit. I don't think it's a big deal, because it was over the phone where it's like gone, right? I'm not recording phone calls. I don't record phone calls. Actually, I did with Lee Trink one time because he's a fucking rat. But one time I recorded a phone call. I don't record phone calls or do no weird shit like that. He said that. He said that's just some Tommy shit and didn't think it was a big deal, right? And he knew going forward. But yeah, let me pull up the tweet. And then when I texted him about it later down the line, he pretended like we've never talked about it before. I was like, bro, what are you doing? And in my head, I'm like, bro, he's just doing this so that if I hypothetically ever screenshotted it, it wouldn't, you know, it looks like he cares and he's defending it like that.
That's Faze Rain saying Banks knew allegedly what Temper was on, and according to Rain, was texting him in a way that maintains his deniability. And mind you, this was one of the bigger Faze scandals that was going on, and you had this casual relationship between Max and Banks. It's all just some really weird type of shadowy cabal stuff going on. That's how I'm viewing it. And like I said, generally speaking, the industry is very predatory, and Max could very well be a victim to an extent, but victims can also become perpetrators in the same way. So the way I've been viewing this is that the corporate stuff and the breakup Faze is having right now is just media sensationalized. Let's be honest, chat. These are all very immature people who are imploding on themselves, and that's being blown up bigger than what I personally think it needs to be. I'm having more issues with the casual racism, the tolerance given to questionable individuals. I want to cite it again, the intolerance paradox. Let's not continuously extend tolerance to the intolerant. And also, I'm just having trouble understanding why, if Banks really did do something with Charlie D'Amelio Emilio. I'm not saying I know or I don't. Why is this now being revealed in petty drama? That's how I'm reading it. I'm not gonna lie. Then on top of all of that, a whole Faze member is just bluntly naming Banks as part of a cover-up of a PDF situation with another Faze member. And we find out Plaqueboymax has assumed mentorship under him while knowing this, because no way he didn't know about one of the biggest Faze scandals that happened this year. A scandal that involved covering up for a PDF file.
Max? Oh shit, yo Max, appreciate the gift, my G. Hope all is well with you, man.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. I know this nigga did some fucked up shit, dog. But I hate seeing niggas look broken, bro. That ass, that shit hurt. I hope this nigga cool, bro. What he did was fucked up, but
so what I'm telling you is that we should empathize with the fact that the industry is looking for the vulnerable, and in terms of this situation, we should wish Max well. But at the end of the day, this is a symptom of a larger issue, and that issue is a very weird industry. And I think the sensationalized stories can almost act as a smokescreen. We knew Faze as a group wasn't solid. It was a corporate revival putting together a bunch of vastly different people from different sides of the internet, and it did what it did what it needed to do, but evidently at the cost of their autonomy, hence the puppet stuff, and at the cost of the well-being of at least Plaqueboymax. So with that being said, if I get this out today, number 2 will arrive before New Year's. I'm gonna get up out of here. Y'all niggas be blessed. Bye bye.